He thought it was just another night of luxury, another chance to laugh at those who served him. The millionaire smirked as he mocked the black waitress, treating her like she was invisible, like her worth was, nothing more than carrying empty plates. But what he didn't know was that she carried a secret far greater than his wealth, a truth that would shatter his arrogance and leave him stunned before the world. How could a single act of dignity turn the tables on power and make a man with everything realize he had nothing at all? She had worked there for years, quietly moving between tables where laughter and wealth spilled like overflowing wine. To most guests, she was invisible, a woman in uniform whose name they never cared to learn. But behind her calm smile was a life that had known struggle, resilience, and dreams too heavy to share with anyone in that glittering hall. The millionaire was a regular, his presence commanding the room, his laughter echoing like a reminder of untouchable power. Every time she walked past him, he found a way to diminish her, a joke at her expense, a careless remark that stung like a thorn pressed deeper with every word. Yet this night felt different. She had woken up with a strange sense of anticipation, as though something was about to change. As she adjusted her apron in the staff corridor, she thought about her son waiting at home, about the sacrifices she made to give him a future she had never been allowed to dream of. She wasn't just a waitress, she was a mother, a fighter, and a woman who carried more dignity in silence than the millionaire had in his entire fortune. The guests poured in, the chandeliers glowing above like 1,000 watching eyes. Every step she took across the polished floor was rehearsed, precise, a routine carved into muscle memory. But beneath that surface of normalcy, tension was building. The air felt heavy like a storm waiting to break. And when the millionaire raised his glass that night, his mocking eyes already searching for her across the room, she knew the moment she had been bracing for had finally arrived. The laughter began softly like the hum of background noise, but soon it sharpened, carrying weight, cutting through the hall until it pointed directly at her. The millionaire had chosen his target again. He raised his voice so the surrounding tables could hear, his glass of champagne glinting under the lights as if to underline every word. He spoke of her uniform, her skin, her place in life, phrases wrapped in mockery, cloaked in what he thought was charm. The crowd chuckled uneasily, some out of politeness, some out of shared cruelty, but all eyes eventually landed on her. For a moment, her body stilled. Years of silence had taught her how to endure, but deep inside something shifted. Her chest tightened, not with shame, but with a quiet, rising power she hadn't felt in years. She had endured long enough. The whispers carried through the tables. Why doesn't she say anything? Doesn't she mind? But they didn't know the truth. She minded. She had always minded. And yet, in every cruel remark, she had seen something that none of them could, weakness hidden behind arrogance. His cruelty wasn't strength. It was fear, fear of being less, fear of being exposed. The night stretched on, and his taunts grew bolder. He offered her a cruel challenge, one meant only to humiliate, something so absurd, so insulting, that the entire room leaned forward with a mix of amusement and disbelief. He bet she couldn't do what he commanded, mocking her as though she were a child playing make-believe. But he didn't know her story. He didn't know what she carried, the skills she had tucked away from another life, the experiences that stretched far beyond these glittering walls. The air grew heavy with anticipation. Some guests whispered nervously, realizing his cruelty had gone too far, while others sipped their drinks with eager eyes, waiting for her humiliation to play out like theater. She looked at him, her gaze steady, her posture unshaken. And in that silence, something powerful radiated. From her presence, an unspoken warning that this time would be different. She didn't laugh. She didn't protest. She didn't shrink. Instead, she prepared to rise to his challenge, not to entertain his cruelty, but to expose the truth of who she was. What came next would not only silence the laughter, it would rewrite the balance of power in that entire room. The hall fell into a hush as she stepped forward, her hands steady, her expression calm. The millionaire lounged back in his chair, smirking, convinced this would end with her humiliation. To him, she was only a waitress, a woman of no consequence. But in that silence, with every eye fixed on her, she revealed a strength that had been hidden in plain sight. She accepted his challenge with a quiet nod. Gasps rippled through the room as she moved with confidence. Not as a servant, but as someone who had nothing to prove, nothing to fear. Every step, every gesture carried the weight of years spent fighting battles no one here had ever imagined. The millionaire's grin faltered. His mockery turned to confusion, then unease. She wasn't stumbling. She wasn't shrinking. She was excelling, flawlessly, undeniably. The very thing he thought would expose her as less than human, instead revealed her brilliance. The audience shifted in their seats, whispers breaking out. Some smiled, their admiration growing with each second, while others stared in stunned silence. And then it hit him. The challenge he had thrown at her in arrogance was being mastered before his eyes. A woman he had mocked for her uniform, her skin, her status, was standing taller than him in every way. By the time she finished, the hall was transformed. The silence gave way to scattered claps that swelled into thunderous applause. The millionaire sat frozen, red-faced, stripped of the power he had wielded so carelessly. For the first time in years, he had no words. She had taken everything he used against her and turned it into the very thing that destroyed his arrogance. In that moment, it was no longer about a challenge. It was about dignity reclaimed, about truth exposed. And the man who once thought himself untouchable realized before everyone that he had been the smallest person in the room all along. The applause echoed long after she stepped back, her expression calm, but her spirit blazing with quiet triumph. She had not raised her voice. She had not begged for respect. She had simply shown the truth of who she was. In that moment, the room saw her not as a servant, not as someone to mock, but as a woman of resilience and strength. The millionaire sat in silence, his wealth and arrogance suddenly meaningless. The very crowd that once laughed at his jokes now looked at him with disdain. His power had always been an illusion, propped up by cruelty and privilege. Stripped of that, he was nothing more than a man caught in his own weakness. But for her, the moment was more than victory. It was freedom. Freedom from the chains of humiliation he had wrapped around her for years. She had proven, not just to him, but to everyone, that dignity cannot be bought, mocked, or erased. It lives in every act of courage, in every refusal to bow down to injustice. As she walked away, she thought of her son at home. She thought of the future he deserved, one where he would not be measured by the color of his skin or the uniform on his back, but by the fire in his heart. She knew the world was still heavy with prejudice, but she had lit a flame that could not be extinguished. The millionaire would never forget that night. Neither would the guests who witnessed it. And perhaps neither should we, because this was more than a story of humiliation reversed. It was a reminder that racism thrives in silence and dignity rises in defiance. So the question remains, how many more stories like hers will it take before the world finally learns?